I'm Jim Knight, co-founder of the Instructional Coaching Group, and you're listening to Coaching Conversations, where I talk with coaching experts from around the world so that all of us can learn better ways to make an unmistakably positive impact on the people around us.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Coaching Questions Show on the Coaching Conversations podcast with Jim Knight. This show is for everyone who calls the Instructional Coaching Group home for all your instructional coaching content. These episodes are designed for everyone who desires to think and learn alongside Jim and myself as you continue to make an impact with all the great work you do. I'm Jessica Wise, a proud member of our ICG consultant team. Today's episode gives listeners a chance to hear about the role artificial intelligence plays in instructional coaching. And once our Q&A has come to a close, we'll have an epilogue or a final note at the end of the show with 2 questions to wrap up before we sign off. So on with the show. Hi, Jim.
Jessica, how are you doing?
I'm well. How are you this Friday morning?
I'm doing well. I'm taking a course next week with my life partner, Jenny, and we're going to turn off all devices for 4 days. So I'll see what it'd be like to not, I won't know what horrors are on Twitter, and I won't know any sports related content or any emails, or it'll just be me and the course and my wife. So it's going to be great.
That sounds fantastic. How's Jenny feeling about this week?
Oh, she's excited to turn everything off. She's sort of been slowly turning things off anyway. She's not on Facebook anymore. She's moving away from a lot of social media. But it's pretty clear. I always do this thing like, how did I feel before I got on X, and how did I feel after? And is my mood higher or lower before and after? It's always worse. So moving away, I think, makes some sense. And you have to know what's going on, and you have to communicate with people, but can't let it consume your life. Besides which, how many videos of cats playing Mozart do I need to watch? Not that many, but one more, maybe just one more I'll watch, and then that's it.
Well, I hope you have a great time. It sounds like you're going to come back refreshed and joyful and have a lot of messages waiting for you.
Right. That's right. Friday morning when I open up my laptop, it'll be like a little scary thing. So
Well, Jim, I'm excited to talk about artificial intelligence today. Before I got on Zoom to have this podcast episode with you, I went to ChatGPT and I asked it to give me some jokes. Are you ready for one?
okay, good.
Okay, here we go.
But for the record,
Yeah.
artificial intelligence is not really that great at jokes.
No, it's
In
not.
my experience, it's not very good.
But after reading, so what I did is I read your article that you sent our team about AI and instructional coaching. And I thought, that's so interesting. I wonder if AI will tell on itself with some of these things that you've warned us about through its jokes. And it did. And I laughed out loud at this one. But maybe I shouldn't have told you that, because if you don't laugh, I'm going to feel like maybe it wasn't funny. Okay, are you ready for it?
I'm ready.
Okay. This is, by the way, this joke is called instructional coaching flavored. So just in case you.
Okay.
Okay. How does AI explain a teaching strategy?
I don't know.
With confidence, regardless of accuracy.
Well,
Okay, you laughed. Whew. Okay.
that's kind of accurate, actually. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I was excited that you laughed, first of all. But when I read that, I thought, hey, that relates to something really interesting that you shared in your article, which we'll talk about today. What about you? What is something fun you did to start your day today?
What have I done today that's fun?
Yes.
Today is all about coffee and toast and Vegemite, and just getting ready for our trip. So this is kind of like getting everything. It's that liminal space in between. I'm working and then I'm not going to be working. So I'm shifting slowly into the not working phase. So you're helping me with the transition, because this is
Oh,
hardly work. This is mostly fun.
yes. Oh, that's nice. I see it that way too. Well, let's dive in, Jim. And so you've written about the power of instructional coaching, and you've given us all here, many readers, a lot of research about the impact instructional coaching has on students. With the rise of artificial intelligence, one concern as it relates to our work is that AI might replace coaches in education. So I wonder, to start our conversation today, could you share your thoughts on that idea?
Well, people won't be surprised to see that I don't think that AI is going to replace coaches. We have a workshop. We've probably did a little thing already in this podcast to describe it, but August 28th, 2025, we're going to do a workshop on AI and coaching. And I would say AI will not replace coaching, but AI is something that coaches should fully understand. And AI is a tool, and for a whole host of reasons, it needs to be used by a human being. For example, just because it gives you an answer doesn't mean it's the right answer. There's an old joke, and the joke goes like this. You probably heard the joke. I didn't get this from the artificial intelligence, though. This is a real joke. And there's a guy, and he's walked home, and he's drunk, and he tries to put his key into his house, and he loses his key. And a police car pulls up, and the guy's standing under the street light looking for his key. And the officer says, he said, "Did you lose your key right here?" And the guy goes, who's drunk, he says, "No, I lost it over here, but the light is better over here, so I'm looking over here." So you're not laughing, but at any rate,
Oh, I'm sorry. That's such a good one.
well done. So, but the point is that AI will give you lots of technical solutions, but they're not necessarily going to solve the problem.
Right.
And the other part, and I don't know if this is coming up later in our conversation, but it's the biggest limitation. So what it suggests might not be the right thing. Just because it comes from a machine, it's like talking to a calculator. It's a machine. It's not a human being. It doesn't have it doesn't think. It doesn't have a soul. But the other thing is, the critical thing that coaches do is help teachers make adjustments and adaptations and modifications. And AI can't do that. AI just gives advice. It doesn't think with you. It tells you what to do, in my experience. And so the real critical work of a coach, sort of sorting through the content, figuring out what's important, what's not important. It's accelerated by the power of AI. Like, for example, let's say I was going to do Think, Pair, Share. I could go on to Claude or Copilot or ChatGPT or whatever, and I could say, "Can you find me a video of a teacher demonstrating how to use Think, Pair, Share effectively?" It'll find something in 15 seconds. So I can watch, and that way it's going to be really helpful. But it may not be a really good video. And so I need a human being who understands what expertise is, to be able to sort through what counts, what doesn't count. And most importantly, to do the adaptive work and making modifications as you coach. What ChatGPT does, or any of the things does, it gives you an answer. It gives you a solution to a problem. But sometimes a recipe isn't the solution. In the complex work of the classroom, you need adaptive solutions, things that are co-created, modified, changed to adapt to the complexities of the classroom. And that's what ChatGPT doesn't do. So you need a coach to do that.
Yes. Something that really stood out to me from what you said is what I've heard is coaches or any educator actually is fearful about AI coming into education. It's here though. So, like you're saying, we need to understand it. But people understand instructional coaching much more than a machine could because it's people to people. Coaching is an educator talking to an educator, which a computer or a calculator, like you mentioned, can't replace. But then you made me think of, and I come back to this often, those complexities of helping adults, which is adaptive work, like you said, and a computer can generate a lot of solutions to problems, but we're coaching people. We're not coaching problems. So that's something that stood out to me from your ideas.
Yeah, I would say people who think AI, as it stands right now, can replace coaching are people who don't understand coaching. And I think it's really important that the people who define how we use AI in professional development are the people who study and implement professional. Coaches should be defining how we use AI, not the tech bros who develop the devices that they're selling. It needs to be the people who actually use it who decide how to use it. Um, and people who don't understand coaching will create these tools, but the tools may or may not be helpful. And you need a professional, person with expertise to be able to sort through what works and what doesn't work.
Mhm.
The other thing too, though, is that it's a calculator. It's not a human being. And sometimes when you work with teachers in coaching, there's a huge human element to it where you can say, "Man, I felt that way too." And there's no way that artificial empathy is going to be better than human empathy. There's no way. You just can't fake genuine compassion and kindness, you know? So the AI thing might flatter people. It might give people nice words, but real compassion is almost chemical. You feel this person. You can even do it through Zoom sometimes. You can feel that connection with another human being. No machine, no artificial empathy will ever replace human empathy, I don't think.
So well said. So hopefully not going to replace coaching. You said you don't think that's going to be true at all. And Jim, you also mentioned that people who understand coaching should be talking about how to use AI in coaching. So I'm so glad that you are working on a book to help us understand that. But for the people out there who are like, okay, it's not replacing it, but how can you share with them ways that artificial intelligence can support the work they're doing instead of replacing it?
Yeah, well, I would say, well, first off, you need to play around with it in all kinds of different ways. And bearing in mind that every time you use it, you're using up quite a bit of energy. And so, one of the ethical issues we'll talk about probably later on is just the fact that it's consuming enormous amounts of energy. And I would say, as a general principle, if Google can do the same thing as artificial intelligence, you should use Google, not AI, because it's going to use way less energy. It's just a morally responsible thing. But if you think of coaching as the impact cycle, and you think of the things you do in the impact cycle, artificial intelligence could help with all those things. So you can, just to take one thing I did with my own um, work, is to take a transcript of a lesson, like record the lesson using something like Otter AI, which is really, I like Otter because you have to pay for it, but it does a better transcription than using Microsoft. You could try Microsoft or Pages. They have a record function, but it doesn't pick it up as well as Otter. So you take the transcript from Otter, and then you develop a checklist for what should be happening in the lesson. You might even use artificial intelligence and say, look, imagine that you're some hybrid of Brian Goodwin and John Hattie and Bob Marzano and Carol Tomlinson. Create a checklist for what effective instruction looks like. And then you have this checklist and put your lesson in, apply the checklist, give me feedback, or you can zone in on one thing: how I tell stories, how I ask questions, how I give explanations. So it can help you with the whole getting a clear picture of reality. It can help you see things. And when the machine tells you, it's obviously not personal. It's not a person. It's a machine. And then when it comes time to set goals, you can ask for advice. But artificial intelligence, it's like a drunk uncle. He's got 3 PhDs, but you never know. Like 30% of the time, he's lying. You never know what he's saying. So you can't trust what it says, but you can ask. You might get some good ideas. At other times, you've got to make modifications and you have to adjust. But you could ask for, what are some possible goals? Sometimes it's helpful, sometimes it's not. So the second, and then identifying a strategy. If this is my goal, what are some possible strategies? Again, the coach has to be there to say, I'm not sure that's the right strategy. And then you can say, well, can you generate a checklist for this strategy? Once you pick, say, Q-Do review as your way to teach graphic organizers, what have you got as a checklist for Q-Do review? It'll give you a checklist. Maybe it's accurate, maybe it's not. You have to filter it, but it gives you a starting point. So, and then when you get into the improvement stage, what are some suggestions you've got, given the fact that my students with learning disabilities are struggling to master this content, but other students are progressing? What advice could you give me? It may or may not give you good advice. So there's a lot of things. And like I said, also in the learning stage, you can identify where to find a video on YouTube that is somebody modeling the practices, So it can really accelerate the process. And it also helps you, especially when you're starting out, if you're like, I'm not really sure I have the depth of knowledge I need to really have expertise in what teaching looks like. So I'm going to go there. I'm going to filter it carefully. I'm going to think about it carefully, but I'm going to have it help me supplement my knowledge about what effective teaching looks like or what goals could be. So each part of the impact cycle could be enhanced through the use of artificial intelligence.
And not replacing the coach. I appreciate that so much.
No, because if you just go to ChatGPT and say, here's my problem, it could say something that's not useful at all. And it's gonna say it definitively. You should change your questions. But the problem might be the activities are not engaging, or the kids are not on task, or there aren't clear expectations for behavior, or maybe questioning is it, but maybe it's a bunch of other things. AI will only see what it's been programmed to see. And it's not necessarily going to give you the right thing. So you need two professionals, the coach and the teacher, looking through it carefully to make sure that what they've got is the right thing. And it's just going to help along the way. It's helpful instead of having to go see a teacher in another classroom if it's not possible. We can find a video online and look at it and say, "Well, I wouldn't do it that way," or "I like that." So you can really speed up the pace. And the things you can do with respect to current reality, take the questions and say, analyze these questions using whatever our school just say. Let's say we're using Bloom. What are the level of these questions using Bloom's taxonomy? It'll pull out the questions and tell you and show you exactly what they are. And that's really, really helpful. It's I even do it to improve my coaching. So I've taken coaching conversations. I did one with you where we were modeling coaching and put it in. How much of the time did I talk? How much of the time did my coachee talk? And it'll tell me what advice you have on how to improve my questions. I may or may not agree, but it gives you great feedback.
Mhm. It does, but like my joke, regardless of accuracy. So like you're
Regardless.
saying see, that joke actually turned out to be good. So like you're saying, it's important for the coach and that teacher to be there together because you don't want the teacher to develop false clarity about whatever might be happening or a teaching strategy they might be looking at or a video they might be watching. And then
Right.
I too, Jim, I'm a part of the CAP program right now, the coaching accreditation program. And my partner, Angie, and I, who've been coaching each other through the process, recorded our session. So I would download the transcript from my conversations with Angie, put them into AI, share the growth framework, and ask for feedback on how well I upheld the growth coaching framework so that I could continue to grow with growth. So it's helpful in that way. But I had to read through it because what I know about coaching and what AI thinks it knows about coaching may not be the same. So the feedback I got in some areas was not exactly in alignment with that growth framework. So I
Yeah.
really did have to pay attention. You can't just say, okay, it says to do these things, so I'll do these things because that didn't align with facilitative coaching. So,
The prompting becomes really important. What
yes, yeah.
question you ask. So if you can give them a checklist and say, apply this checklist, it'll probably give you better feedback.
Mhm.
If you have very specific things like how much time did I talk, how much time did they talk, or when was I telling the person versus asking questions,
Mhm.
very specific prompts will give you more information. But even still, it might not be accurate. So if you say, how much time did I talk? How much time did it talk? It'll say, you talked 54.23%, and your coachee talked for whatever it is, 46.76 or whatever it is. It might not be true. So you have to go back and say, that doesn't really jibe as being accurate. And then that's why it's helpful to have two different approaches. So you try it in Chat GPT and then you try it in Claude and you go, wow, Claude gave me a whole different set of numbers. So it's not at a place where it's precise. What the tech people call hallucinations is a real problem.
Yeah, I thought that part of your writing was interesting, hallucinations. So, yes, that was a big one for me. So, Jim, the next question I have is even as we leverage artificial intelligence to support instructional coaching, you shared in that article where you mentioned hallucinations that there are ethical concerns about using AI, especially in education. So, what do you believe is the most urgent ethical questions schools might need to grapple with as we consider AI?
Well, I think schools need to write a policy about how they use artificial intelligence. And and so one of the big issues is the environment. Uh, I um, I talked about this in our institute last week, and one of my evaluation forums said, "I can't believe how much you go on and on about artificial intelligence when you know the environmental cost of AI." Um, and right now, according to MIT study um, that was done for the U.S. government, more than 4% of the American energy goes into artificial intelligence, and by 2028, they estimate it's going to be close to 12% or more than 12%. And they have these huge buildings that are bigger than multiple football fields, filled with computers, burning out stuff all the time. And it's using up an enormous amount of energy. And it also uses up a lot of clean water. And so I think schools to say, we use it for this, but we don't use it for that. That's a really important thing. And then, anything you put into ChatGPT, you might as well imagine it on the front page of the New York Times. it's not clear, and to my mind at least, what's private and what's not. Sam Altman, who's the guy behind ChatGPT, he just said, we could be asked to bring things up in court that you say. So, if you if you've got something personal, a lot of people are using ChatGPT for therapy, but you better be careful because what you're saying is private. And so I think, particularly when it comes to education, there needs to be a policy about what we will and won't share. Now, I wouldn't want it to be we don't use artificial intelligence because I think our school would fall behind. Our kids need to know how to use it. It's not going away. It's going to become bigger and bigger. It's evolving all the time. It's the biggest thing probably in our lifetime, technological innovation. So you want kids to understand it, but something simple like there'll be no names included or any kind of thing that would designate who a person is when you load in a transcript. Pretty easy to remove the names if you have a transcript. So if you're posting something, there should be no signifiers in it, would be a big thing. And then the other thing is you have to recognize that these local language models that function for Claude and Copilot and all the Verigenesis and all the different ones people use, they're based on Reddit. They're based on the internet. And so they bring all the bias that's in all that language. And so you have to be careful to look at what you're looking at and say, is this biased against women? Is this biased against people of color? And really filter it. So there's a wonderful book, forget the author's name now, Nancy as her first name, but it's called Code Dependent, which talks about the personal experience of artificial intelligence. And one of the big things is the fact that it predicts things that people use it to predict whether or not people will be, for example, criminals. And it's not reliable and it's not fair to make predictions about people based on this. And then there's what's called deep fakes, where you take a picture of somebody and you completely change it. And so there's heartbreaking stories about people who've been damaged by these deep fakes. So I think it's really important to have a school policy, think through the implications of it. And that book, Code Dependent, will be a good one for people to start with, to look at sort of the ethical implications of what it happens. But I think the most important thing is to get clear on what we're going to do and what we're not going to do. Not to say we're not going to do AI, but to do that. And then the second part of this, and maybe we're going to get to this in a bit, but is it changes our understanding of what it means to be creative, to create, because now it's evolved, and that's another ethical implication. Is it okay to go into ChatGPT and say, hey, can you create a checklist for how to create a learning map, as Jim Knight describes it in High Impact Instruction? That's kind of theft. And what about images? There's lots of images that are copied from other people and mashed together, but all those images on artificial intelligence, they came from someone else who created them, who's not getting money for them. And so it's ripping people off too. So there's a ton to think through, and really, really important. But the most important things in a school are probably recognizing bias and calling it out, getting really clear on the energy costs, and maybe most importantly, that we're going to be careful about how the privacy issues about what we share and don't share. You know what it is? Sorry, I keep interrupting you, but this is a whole new planet in our solar system. And so it's raising issues we've never had to deal with before, because what it does is something different for us. And so we have to think through the implications, I think, to move forward.
That is important. I liked that in your article that you called it a new planet in the solar system. And it's very easy to get swept up in AI because it is neat and it's different. And it's, like you said, the newest tech thing that we'll experience maybe ever, but to proceed with caution, because we know to be cautious when we look for things on the internet. But what's happening is it comes up on AI and we take it as face
Right.
value. So that is something to consider. And when I was reading your article, I paused when I got to the environmental implications, thinking that's probably not something we even think about,
Right.
especially students in school who maybe haven't even been exposed to environmental considerations of that nature yet.
Mm.
So, but another thing that you said made me think of our students. You mentioned making a policy in schools, and it's so important. My husband teaches high school, so I hear a lot of the great high school stories. But one of them I hear is the critical thinking of students has decreased significantly since AI has come out because kids will just pop something in and they'll send that AI generated assignment in without critically thinking about the task at all. So that policy is really important.
Yeah, I'm not entirely convinced of that. There's a study that it was out of MIT that people keep pulling out about that they looked at the brains of people while they were writing, but there were only 18 people in each group. That's not a large enough population to
Mm.
generalize. And with looking at certain kinds of thinking, like connections you make in your brain, and if you use ChatGPT or you're doing the writing on your own, yeah, it's probably a harder mental work, but I don't know that it's. And then in the article, they said that the papers that were written by the non-ChatGPT people were assessed as the better, but they didn't explain how the assessment worked. What I think is, I'm in Nebraska today, and I live in Kansas some of the time. I live in Nebraska some of the time, and I have to drive back and forth. And so, prior to having a global positioning system, prior to GPS, I would have had to pull out a map, and the map would say, "Go here, turn left, turn right." And once I've driven here 2 or 3 times, I would never forget how to get here. The fact of having to look at the map, figuring it out, thinking it through, I would remember it. Now I still turn the chat, not chat, the GPS. I still turn it on to remind me how to get here because I haven't memorized that because I haven't done that kind of thinking. So it's going to be different kind of thinking that we're doing, but I don't know that it's making us stupid or anything. It just means we're thinking differently.
Absolutely. Well, Jim, next I want to talk about something you said a moment ago about writing with artificial intelligence. You and a group of co authors are currently working on a book about AI and instructional coaching, which I'm sure will be an instant bestseller because people are so interested. So I wonder if you can share what has it been like to have AI as a collaborator on this new book?
Well, it's helpful and it speed things up to some extent, but I've done enough where, and the thing is, in writing this book, I think we're going to call it Coach GPT. That's the current title.
Mm, okay.
You like that title?
I like it.
So, in writing the book, what's become clear is I'm really good at spotting artificial intelligence generated writing. And then now you and your partner have explained the idea of the M dash. The M dash is popular, but there's many other things too that happen with respect to artificial intelligence. So one of them is um, tricolon type structures where you have three things. Sometimes it's 3 words. Then there's positive type constructions like he came, he saw, he conquered. And then there's grandiose language like this is truly life changing. It could be one of the most profound moments in your life. So artificial intelligence is always doing that, and it loves the what I call the this, but not that thing. So it'll say he was on a diet, but he ate the whole chunky monkey container of ice cream. And it does a lot of that. I'm not this, but I'm that. And there's other rhetoric. I'm going to be sending out a bunch of little clips of going through how it works. And so the trouble with all those rhetorical techniques is beneath the technique, it sounds like something's happening, but it's kind of like junk food because beneath the technique, there's not a lot of substance. So we're going back through and like using ChatGPT to identify all those rhetorical techniques, also short sentences, short paragraphs, and made a list of like 20 things that it does so we can remove them from the writing because ultimately the writing is kind of soulless, but also it's not that meaningful. It sounds like something's going on, but it's not. And after you read it for a while, it's pretty boring. So because it overdoes it. There's an M dash. I love the M dash. One of my favorite little things, that little M dash. But it's in every paragraph or
Yeah.
every other paragraph, and so it overdoes all those techniques. So I think I like it to edit. I like to say, can you find, I say to it, write in the style of Jim Knight. It'll give me stuff written in my voice. But um, I'll say, go through and see if you can find any typos or corrections. And it'll just like a second later, and I say, don't change any of the text. Just at the end of it, give me a list of the errors you see or corrections, or is there anything that's like really awkward here, that you could change? And for those things, I think it's really, really helpful. But I wouldn't want to start writing poems about what matters to me in life through the use of artificial intelligence. So again, it's probably the same thing as with coaching. It's a tool you can use, but over reliance of it on it's not going to work. And so but one of the questions is, and this is surfaced by that MIT study, what is the purpose of having kids write? Some would say the purpose of having kids write is so they can use their writing to think things through. And some people would say that the purpose of writing is to share ideas. And so if the purpose of writing is for me to share ideas, then I think artificial intelligence can be really helpful, particularly if I'm multilingual or I have a learning disability. Then it can make learning can be much more inclusive for kids who traditionally struggle with writing. Their ideas can come through because you pump it in, you say, fix up the writing, remove the errors. It's not going to help with kids who think things through and keep writing and writing. But if writing is about sharing ideas, then I think artificial intelligence can make education way more accessible. And even adults who are good writers, like but they might really struggle to write a book or put their ideas in. Well, artificial intelligence can help them create that. We're going to have more people will be able to share their ideas effectively because of the help of artificial intelligence. So it's a complicated thing, but it's certainly interesting, and it was eye-opening to start to recognize the patterns of AI and how it uses. I learned so much about rhetoric, and I learned it by asking ChatGPT. I took the preface from my book. I said, "What are the rhetorical techniques that are being used in here?" And then it identified all the things, and I'm like, well, that's what AI does. That's how it does it.
It would have been really nice to have this when I was working on the APA 7th edition while writing my dissertation. You said editing of that. I spent hours making sure I got that right. That would have been really
Oh,
nice.
well, that is one of the best things. I just now for the references, I just say, okay, here's the book, here's what I've written. Create my reference page for me. And there it is. And I say APA 7th edition, and it does it for me. It's wonderful.
Oh, yes, that would have saved me a lot of time. So
Right.
note to doctoral candidates who are writing their dissertation. Well, Jim, thanks. Is there
I have
anything?
one more thing I
Oh,
want to say about this.
perfect. I was going to say anything else. I could feel it. One more
Okay,
thing.
well, the one more thing is I think if you're writing using artificial intelligence, you should explain it. Now, not if it's just editing like a copy editor, but in our book the Coach GPT, it's got your blessing. So I think we're going to go with that title. In the book Coach GPT, at the end of each chapter, we say, here's how we used artificial intelligence to write this chapter. So we can be really transparent about it. And our thing was to write a book about artificial intelligence and not use AI to write the book is like giving a lecture on cooperative learning. I mean, you have to apply the ideas just to see what comes. And we've learned a lot, but I think there needs to be transparency about how AI is used. I'm thinking about putting a thing on my email signature that says I might need to use AI to analyze what you said so it's easier for me to understand. So if that's not okay, please let me know, because I get these long streams or as everybody does, all these different emails. And I'm like, well, just put it into AI and have it, tell me what it's all about so I don't have to read all that stuff.
Good to know. So when I send you an email.
Right.
Well, Jim, to close out our show today, we have two final questions about AI and IC. First is, what has been a major aha for you as you've spent this year learning so much about AI?
Oh, there's so many things. I mean, I'm curious. There's so many things that just kind of blow your mind. But Jenny Kelly, who we used to work together, she was part of ICG. She's still a part of our group in many ways. She hosts the institutes we do in Kansas. She has a Toyota 4Runner. I think it's like a 2023 or 2024 4Runner. She had this big dresser, She measured the dresser, and then she went into ChatGPT and she said, I have a Toyota 4Runner 2024, this edition, this brand of what it is, and this is the kind it is. I have this dresser, this is the dimensions of the dresser. Can I put the dresser in the back of the 4Runner? And it said, you can, but you have to turn it sideways because you've only got to get through the door. You'll have to turn it sideways and then you can drop it down afterwards, but you've only got an inch to spare. And that was exactly what happened.
Wow.
And I've then known people who take a picture of the food in their fridge, say, tell me what my recipe is, and artificial intelligence, I use it a lot for suggestions for music, some ideas about what I can do. And it's reached a point where, and once I put in a list of my favorite albums. And so now I'll just say, knowing what you know about me, what do you think I should listen to? And it'll give me recommendations. So little things like that, there are kind of trivial. And in light of the environmental cost, you might even ask, is it a good thing to do? But it just blows my mind every day. I mean, I did a little video clip on this, and it's in our course on AI, where I use ChatGPT to help me learn French. So I read a little bit of the Little Prince. Actually, it's a different book I read on the video, but I read a little bit of the Little Prince, and I read it in French, and then I translate it into English. And then my AI companion says, well, this is kind of good. But then I say, could you read it in perfect French? Reads it in perfect French. And then I say, could you do it in Mandarin? It'll read it in Mandarin. Like, it's amazing what can happen with that. What about you? What's something that you've seen?
I have been using ChatGPT to help me with my coaching, specifically through the CAP program, but also when I have a conversation that I'm left thinking about after a virtual institute, a workshop, or a call with someone. So I'll plug the transcript in, like I mentioned earlier, and ask a specific prompt, which I've
Mhm.
prompts are probably the most challenging part for me is really understanding how to say what I want because I could get 100 responses and none of them are what I'm looking for.
Right.
So I've been getting feedback on my coaching so that I can share with other people because we hear a lot, Jim, how do coaches provide feedback? So I've been trying myself to try to experiment with feedback for me as a coach so that I can say, as a coach, you might record a conversation and put the transcript into AI to reflect on your questioning or how well you were showing up with the partnership principles. So that's been really helpful for me.
You know that thing about 10,000 hours that Malcolm Gladwell popularized, which it came from Anders Ericsson. Imagine if you had 10,000 hours of coaching where after every coaching session, you got feedback through artificial intelligence, and you imagine where you'd be after 10,000 hours. So it's not the 10,000 hours of doing the same thing, it's 10,000 hours of deliberate practice with feedback. That's what can make it work. It's quite remarkable. But you haven't done anything cool, like fun things, or you're just too worried about the environment, so you're not wasting your.
I just don't wanna hurt the environment. No, what we have done is because, as you know, my 10-year-old is a rock star baker, is we've taken a picture of all the dry ingredients that we have, all of the ingredients in our refrigerator, and helped her come up with her own recipes instead of just using cookbooks because she wants to start her own cookbook. So we have generated multiple lists of we do use Google, though. I do try to use the Google AI. So we've done that quite a few times.
But you can take a picture and it'll give you some
Yes.
suggestions.
Yes, and we'll prompt a recipe a 10-year-old can do independently.
Yeah. You know, at the institute we did last week, I recorded. I had the people work in groups, and then I said, "What do you want to get out of the institute?" And what are questions you want answered? So each group would record it. So I recorded all the things they said, and then I loaded it into. I think I did use ChatGPT, and I said, "Okay, synthesize all these questions
Mhm.
into 10 questions, and then put them into PowerPoint for me." And then so out came PowerPoint slide, and so at the break, I just double checked everything, loaded it in, so I could show them the questions at 10:30 that they gave me at the start of the session.
I like it.
Amazing.
Yeah. Anything else that you've done with AI that's cool or fun?
Oh, there's always something. I mean, every day there's something, but it's been big for music. It's really given me a lot of tips on music, but yeah, it's kind of whatever's happening in life. There's a way I might be using it at some point. Like I have dad running shoes, like I've got Hoka running shoes and that's like it. And I'm like, I got to get some cool running shoes so I don't look like dad. So I said, where can I get some cool running shoes? And it's like most popular, cool looking running shoes that aren't too crazy. And so it gave me some advice. So like stuff like that. And and I wouldn't have been able to get it in the same way on on Google. That's the problem. It gives you such targeted, focused feedback that it's often more compelling than. But also, I feel I'm researching it, so I feel justified in trying out all the avenues. And trying out different things.
Yes, maybe Coach GPT will have a chapter about the fun things you've learned along the way, like where to
Right.
get running shoes.
Right. Right. Well, it depends if they're cool or not. I don't know if we can trust it or not, but yeah,
Oh, right. It might be the regardless of accuracy joke
might
of
be the drunk uncle. Yeah. Right.
the drunk uncle who's inaccurate.
Right.
Is there anything else you want to say about AI and IC, Jim?
Well, I think people are right to be cautious. There are a lot of problems. Um, Artificial isn't human. There are ethical implications, environmental implications. Um, Technocentrism, I think, is the term. People like the technology and they don't really do the thinking anymore. But it's coming. It's here. It's not going away. So rather than just trying to stop it, I think we should define how it's used. That's why having an ethics policy is important, and that's why I think when it comes to coaching, the people who define how we use artificial intelligence should be coaches, and not the people who are selling us the technology.
Thank you so much, Jim. And everyone be on the lookout for Coach GPT coming to
Mm.
a bookstore or online platform near you very soon.
And the article you're referencing is going to be in the Learning Professional in a couple months. So I don't know
Wonderful.
the exact date it's coming out, but it will be in the Learning Professional.
Yes, so please check that out, everyone. Well, Jim, thank you so much for today. And everyone, thank you for listening. If you found today's episode helpful, it would help us if you liked or followed the podcast. You can also leave us a rating or a comment so we can continue creating meaningful content just for you. Thank you. And until next time, go forth and lead great coaching conversations. Thanks so much, Jim.
Thank you, Jessica.